In a world verge of chaos, a young boy's extraordinary routine was just the beginning. Every morning at 7 a.m., he embarked on a grueling 10 km run. By noon, he honed his sword fighting skills against a dummy, delivering a relentless barrage of 500 head strikes. As evening fell at 5 p.m., he shifted to weightlifting, performing the Big 3 exercises. This relentless cycle continued for 14 days straight. Someone intrigued by his unwavering discipline asked, "Why are you doing this with a crooked smile?" The boy responded, "Did I suddenly go crazy? Maybe it would have been better if I had. But there's a reason for my madness." Just then, a status window showed up, bearing a dire message: "The door to the end of days is opening soon. Please prepare for the end. Recommended quests, strength exercises, cardio exercises, learning kendo." As the countdown ticked away, anxiety gripped the air. The world was about to end. At the precise moment the timer hit 0, the scene shifted to 15 days earlier. It was a normal day when a critical disaster alert blared on everyone's phones. Today at 1832, monsters appeared near Wang Mountain. Citizens in the area are instructed to evacuate immediately. More alerts followed at different locations. Panic ensued as live video feeds showed terrifying creatures wreaking havoc. One particular broadcast captured the attention of millions. A vlogger was live streaming near a monster when it suddenly appeared behind him. He joked, "Since I came all the way here, should I go a little closer?" His viewers frantically typed warnings behind you, but thinking it was a prank, laughed it off. In an instant, the monster attacked, and his screen went dark. Then we meet our protagonist Lee Ho-young, who is 29 years old, but looks like 16, maybe due to Korean skincare. Watches this unfold and gets shocked in daylight. He states, "Damn, that surprised me. Why does that video look so realistic? And why do we keep getting these disaster alert text messages today? What on earth is happening?" Reflecting on the struggle to make ends meet, he mused, "And now there's talk of monsters. Who would believe such a thing yet?" A nagging doubt lingered. Suddenly, he spotted a monster whose leg is stuck on a trap. Frightenedly, he thinks, "What's that monster doing here? That's kind of scary, so let's run for now." He remembered, "Oh right, this is the day the math teacher will be here," but the monster's pitiful cries stopped him in his tracks. It seemed to be asking for help. Despite its pleading eyes, he thought, "Even if it's trying to act cute, it's still too scary. I'm human, and that's a monster. I'm not nice enough to show compassion to a monster." The creature, as if sensing his hesitation, showed him a photo of its family. Ho-young can't ignore the power of family, so he helps her escape. While leaving, Globin gave him something. Then a status panel appeared displaying the words "Silver Goblin's Pill. Once consumed, you will obtain something." Is this some kind of hologram? Consume it? Who would eat something so suspicious? He wondered aloud. Suddenly, a news broadcast interrupted his thoughts. Right now, large buildings have appeared all over the world. These buildings resemble towers, and we have lost contact with the U.S. Army that entered the tower. Panic surged through him as he saw the monsters and the mysterious towers. Has the apocalypse really started? He asked himself. Just then, a tower emerged near his house in Korea. The same message appeared on his screen: "Silver Goblin's Pill. Once consumed, you will obtain something." Doubtful yet desperate, the protagonist looked at the pill. "I don't know if this is the right decision," but despite his hesitations, he swallowed the pill. Instantly, a status panel announced, "You have obtained Sage Status Window, which will provide the guide with the highest rate of survival in your current situation." A mysterious book materializes in Ho-young's hand. The panel reads, "The door to the end of days is opening soon. Time left until the end of days: 15 days, 4 hours, 12 minutes, 52 seconds. Please prepare for the end. Recommended quests, strength exercises, cardio exercises, learning kendo." Determined to survive, the Ho-young commits to the guide's recommendations, dedicating himself to rigorous exercise for 15 days, abandoning all other pursuits. Despite his relentless efforts, the fateful moment arrives, and the door to the end opens. As he grips his sword, the game begins. A panel signals the start of the tutorial, announcing that the aptitude test is complete. Suddenly, a new window appears. "The Sage Status Window will provide the guide with the highest rate of survival. Use all 60 minutes and kill as many monsters as possible." Realizing he can leverage the Sage Status Window in the game, the Ho-young reflects on how the guide's advice had prepared him for this moment. He decides to hunt monsters instead of fleeing the forest. With determination, he embarks on the hunt, conserving his MP. Upon reaching level 2, he receives a message about HP and MP recovery and earning points for stat increases. Grateful for the timely recovery, he readies himself for further challenges. However, another message reveals a drawback of the Sage status window's slower leveling compared to other players. Initially dismayed by the perceived penalty, he soon realizes his points remain intact. He contemplates his options, enhancing strength for powerful attacks or agility for speed and reflexes, but at this moment, he needs sensitivity. After defeating a horned raccoon, he notes that it wasn't as strong as expected for a tutorial monster, easily overcome even with default stats. The panel instructs him to use the entire 60-minute tutorial to eliminate as many monsters as possible. The challenge now lies in finding more raccoons. Suddenly, he encounters a formidable monster. What kind of monster is this, he wonders as it attacks swiftly. Comparing it to a rhinoceros-like creature, he identifies it as the boss. Despite its speed and strength, the protagonist remains composed, recognizing that while it differs from other one-horned raccoons, it is still manageable. With determination, he engages in battle, ultimately defeating the one-horned raccoon alpha and clearing the hidden quest. As a reward, he receives gold. Reflecting on his journey, he notices 11 women who seem to have also completed the tutorial and been sent there. Panic spreads among them, understandable given the sudden and drastic changes. The protagonist acknowledges that if he hadn't known about the impending apocalypse, he might have panicked too. Resolving to stay calm and determined, he reassures himself that he will find a way to survive and make it out alive. Despite the uncertainty of their situation, he asks if this is truly the end of the world and what they're supposed to do now. A figure named Kum Kum explains, "It's a good question. All 22 players present will be participating in a game where their lives are at stake." This revelation shocks everyone. The Hoyoung, trying to make sense of the situation, asks if they can return to their normal lives once they reach the top of the tower. Kum Kum admitted he didn't know the answer, leaving Lee Hoyoung perplexed. He questioned the purpose of climbing the tower if there was no guarantee of returning. Is this a trap, he wondered. Despite Kum Kum's unassuming appearance, Lee Hoyoung knew he couldn't defeat a level 55 opponent. Watching cautiously, a panel appeared before him, urging him to help Kum Kum get home. Conflicted, Lee Hoyoung pondered the implications of attacking Kum Kum. The rabbit had never harmed him, as the guide had advised. Yet, the prospect of returning home tempted him. Despite his uncertainty, he ultimately decided to act. Another player stepped forward, boldly declaring his intent to reassure everyone, attributing the tragedy to a mere mistake. Lee Hoyoung grappled with the revelation that his guide had deceived him. Amidst the call for assistance, Lee Hoyoung was stunned by the sudden activation of his Sage status window, revealing 2 triggers: the ability to view other status windows and an attempt to dissuade him. Resolute, Lee Hoyoung asserted his plan. As the confrontation unfolded between Lee Hoyoung and Kum Kum, Lee Hoyoung sensed something amiss. Then a yellow-haired girl tries to warn him, stating someone passed away, trying to challenge him, but he reassured her and the group that he had a plan. Kum Kum's mention of only 24 players raised suspicions. Promising an exciting outcome, the tension in the air mounted as Lee Hoyoung engaged Kum Kum in combat, wielding his sword against Kum Kum's deadly punches. However, amidst the clash, Lee Hoyoung sensed something peculiar in Kum Kum's words. Despite there being 25 people, Kum Kum mentioned the wrong number of players. Lee Hoyoung deduced the reason there were actually only 24 individuals present. The 25th was a hologram created by Kum Kum. Despite this deception, Lee Hoyoung proved to be a skilled fighter, impressing Kum Kum with his abilities. As the battle progressed, Kum Kum's HP reached 0, revealing that he wasn't his true form but merely a hologram. The hologram vanished upon sustaining damage, leaving behind a message urging those with the courage to face the challenges ahead. He states he deducted it was a hologram by noticing Che Yiseol, the yellow-haired girl's clothes, which should have blood on them, which he made up on the spot. Kim Seong remarked that the stat pill would be wasted on Lee Hoyoung, implying that his low level suggested he was either incredibly weak or had simply run away from combat during the tutorial. Lee Hoyoung, however, remained determined, ready to face whatever came next in this deadly game. Kim Seong offered Lee the chance to yield, ostensibly for the greater good. Internally, Lee Hoyoung questioned Kim Seong's audacity, wondering if he was serious. When Lee asserted that yielding wasn't his style, Kim Seong accused him of greed and mocked his low level. Despite Kim Seong's taunts, Lee chose to ignore him. Using his points, Lee knew there were 3 major avenues for utilizing gold purchasing items, leveling up skills, or enhancing stats. Lee decided to prioritize balancing his stats, focusing on increasing his strength, stamina, and agility to a baseline of 20 each. After allocating his gold, Lee changed into a new gym uniform. Meanwhile, Kim Seong expressed frustration over the cost of leveling up skills and suggested that Lee focus on this aspect as well. Unfazed by Kim Seong's remarks, Lee remained focused on his plans. Chae Yi-seol asks assistance to Lee regarding which she should upgrade, then he asks why is she asking him, that she replies she thought he was brave then. To make sure she speaks the truth, he asks her how much gold she has. Then she replies 800, which was exactly as shown by Sage's status window. Then he advised her to upgrade stamina. Then Chae Yi-seol expressed her thanks to Lee for his guidance as they prepared for the upcoming mission. Soon after, an announcement was made regarding the formation of 3-man parties for the first floor mission. Players without a party would be randomly assigned to one, with 30 minutes provided. Lee began to contemplate his options for the upcoming challenge. Following Lee and Chae Yi-seol, Kim Seong found himself left out as the remaining players formed their parties. Despite the setback, he remained determined to overcome the challenges ahead. As the announcement declared the end of the 30-minute preparation time and the commencement of the first floor mission, Lee found himself filled with frustration at being paired with someone he considered inferior, like Kim Seong. Reflecting on his mission, he remained determined to prove himself and emerge victorious alongside his unlikely teammate. The panel revealed their mission: annihilate the Kobold tribe within a 12-hour time limit. Tensions rose within the party as Kim Seong asserted his intention to eliminate the Kobold tribe single-handedly and warned Lee not to interfere. Lee, recognizing the importance of teamwork, agreed to follow Kim Seong's lead for the time being, silently resolving to assess the situation as they proceeded. Kim Seong interjected, questioning Lee's decision at their current level, acknowledging the dangerous nature of their surroundings. Kim Seong and Lee agreed on the need for caution as they ventured deeper into the Tower of the End. As the kobold appeared, its formidable strength took Lee and the others by surprise. Lee immediately suggested assessing the surroundings for any additional threats, while Kim moved to engage the enemy while Chae Yi-seol was healing him in the meantime. Lee noticed that the kobold only attacked when provoked and realized that Kim Seong's earlier actions may have needlessly antagonized them. However, he saw a silver lining in the situation. They now had the opportunity to capture a few kobold for research purposes. Amid the fight, Kim Seong unlocked a new skill, Stone Fist Level 1, demonstrating his growing prowess. Suddenly, another kobold appeared, signaling trouble for Kim Seong and adding to the urgency of their situation. While Kim is under attack, Chae Yi-seol, being a healer, tries to help him but is thrown back by the kobold's strength. Then Lee enters the scene after examining the situation. He attacks kobolds with a sword and cuts a poison apple to finish it off. With the odds stacked against them, Lee and his team realized the kobold might be vulnerable to poison. Acting on this insight, he summoned a poison apple from his inventory, effectively using it to defeat the kobold. After saving Chae Yi-seol from imminent danger, Lee checked on her to ensure she was unharmed. Yi-seol expressed her gratitude for his timely intervention, acknowledging the potential danger they narrowly avoided due to Lee's swift action. With the immediate threat neutralized, Lee and Yi-seol regrouped, preparing to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their mission. Overwhelmed by the kobold, Lee and Yi-seol, however, efficiently eliminated the kobold using poison apples. Lee saved Kim Seong from being overwhelmed by the monsters, reminding him of his earlier remarks about riding on someone else's coattails. Then Kim apologizes, calling him Big Brother. With their combined efforts, they complete the mission to annihilate the kobold tribe, ready for the next challenge in this perilous game. The mission was finally over. Lee Ho-young, Seong, Yi-seol, and their team emerged from the portal, a wave of relief washing over them. Seong, despite their success, couldn't help but cringe as he remembered bowing his head to Lee, a mere level 2, while he himself was level 8. "It's over for me if this leaks," he muttered, "but I'm a man of my word, so I won't go back on it." Yi-seol, always perceptive, pointed out, "Nobody else is around." Ho-young added, "We cleared it faster because we got lucky and found the kobold's weakness." "It wasn't just luck," Yi-seol said. "Your observational skills helped us a lot." Ho-young, feeling modest, replied, "It was thanks to your support." Thinking it's all because of the sage window, he thinks, "Sometimes I feel like a fraud." Just then, other teams began to emerge from their portals. Ho-young noticed one particular group. That's Kim Jun-song's party, he said. They must have found the apples too. I wonder if the other teams will make it back. Another group stumbled out, but only 2 of them remained. One girl fell to the floor, sobbing. Where's the third? Someone asked. Through her tears, she cried. It's just the 2 of us. The voice of the tower boomed. The first mission has been completed by all parties. Yeseol protested. Wait. There are still people missing, the voice replied. 6 parties have returned. 8 people failed to return, Ho-young grimaced. If 8 died from this, how many more will perish before we reach the top? Calculations for the mission's rewards were announced. Those who survived and completed the mission received 1,000 gold each. Ho-young, having earned 2,000 gold from both bonuses, thought it was modest compared to the tutorial, but decided to save his gold nonetheless. Someone inquired, who got first place? Ho-young was about to reveal it. But Seong, brimming with pride, interrupted. It was us, though. It did all the hard work, he announced excitedly. The reaction was mixed. Some people giving Seong odd looks, thinking they managed to get first place with a level 1 player with them. Are you mad? Seong asked, noticing the disbelief. Ho-young, grateful for the distraction, muttered, I'm just glad the attention is off me. Whispers started circulating. A level 2 got first place? He must have been carried. Yeseol tried to defend him, but Ho-young stopped her. They won't listen anyway. I'll just have to show them. Kim Jun-song clapped his hands, calling for attention. Everyone, calm down. We need to focus on our survival. Junho agreed. That's right, we need to stay positive and work together. Suddenly, a light formed on one of the wall torches, quickly turning purple and red, illuminating the entire room. Warnings began to flood their notifications. Panic spread as the tower announced that the survival rate for the first level was below average. A penalty mission was being put into place, a death mission. Ho-young, curious, read the message, choose one candidate. The player with the most votes will carry out the mission. If you don't vote, you'll vote for yourself. The chosen one will die. Panic ensued. People looked around, trying to decide who to sacrifice. Yeseol, thinking quickly, suggested, if we all vote for ourselves, nobody will be sent out. A man asked, what if we all die then? As time ticked down, a woman pointed at Ho-young. He has 1 vote already. Junho, feeling guilty, apologized. We need to choose. Ho-young expected it, but was still taken aback. I don't want to die, he admitted. Yeseol tried to convince the others again, but Ho-young reassured her, it's fine. They won't listen anyway, and he thinks to himself he won't be trusting them. The votes above Ho-young's head began to increase. His low level made him the obvious target. Yeseol reprimanded the others, but it was futile. Seong, grinningly, with a thumbs down, said, sorry man, making his votes to 10, then the timer ends. The portal to the death mission began to open. A giant red gate appeared, and some people started to feel regret. Yeseol covered her mouth, crying. Seong, laughing, thinks, problem solved, now I will be the main character. Ho-young, now their sacrificial lamb, saw faces of guilt and relief around him. He had no choice but to step into the portal. The guide's voice reassured him, you'll get a satisfactory reward. With a mixture of fear and excitement, Ho-young walked into the portal, ready for whatever awaited him. The flames in the room flickered back to their normal state as the tension slowly lifted. Conversations buzzed around the group about their recent decisions and the fate of their companions. Kim Jun-song Seong, with a hint of worry in his eyes, turned to Yeseol. Are you okay? He asked, his voice soft but laden with regret. It feels awful. We were supposed to be a team. Kim Seong scoffed, his expression hardening. Regretful? Give me a break. He got what he deserved. Jun-song looked puzzled. What do you mean? Seong's eyes narrowed. You could tell by the levels alone. Ho-young was just leeching off us. He didn't pull his weight. Yeseol's eyes flashed with anger. What are you talking about? Ho-young was the one who carried us through most of the mission. Nah, Seong replied dismissively. He just swooped in for the final hit on the kobold after we did all the work. How delusional can you be? Yeseol shot back. Seong rolled his eyes, recalling how Ho-young effortlessly took down enemies. He pondered whether Ho-young had some hidden skill to mask his true power. But even with his doubts, he hoped Ho-young would make it back. I hope he's as good as you say, Jun-song muttered. I want him to return alive. Yeseol wiped away her tears, recalling Ho-young's encouraging words. He will. I believe in him. Jun-song managed a small smile. Yeah, he'll come back. I'm sure of it. Inside the death mission, Ho-young found himself at a foreboding kobold camp. The atmosphere was thick with menace. He had voted for himself, feeling confident, but knew he'd need a word with Seong later. The mission objective appeared: kill the enraged chieftain and his hunting group. Ho-young's eyes locked on the massive, red-skinned kobold leader, a level 12 monster that let out an earth-shaking roar. The guide's voice rang in his mind. The chieftain is weak to poison. Like the rest, Ho-young crushed a poisonous apple, letting its juice drip onto his blade. A level 12, this is going to be a nightmare. If anyone else were here, they'd be dead for sure. A kobold lunged at him, but he dodged the spear with ease, slicing through 3 of the creatures in one swift motion. All right, side mobs are down. Now for the big guy charging at the chieftain. Ho-young's sword clashed with the beast's. The kobold leader skillfully minimized the impact by pulling back at the right moment. Ho-young noted the chieftain's combat prowess, his mind racing. To his surprise, the chieftain turned and bolted. Ho-young gave chase, only to land a cut on its backside. The beast paused under the full moon, its eyes glowing with a new, terrifying intensity. In an instant, it slashed at Ho-young, leaving a deep gash on his chest. Back at the base, Seong spoke dismissively. "We can't do anything for someone who's dead. I'll carry us through the tower." Yeseol ignored him, praying for Ho-young's safety. Seong scoffed. "He's obviously dead. Why bother have a conscience for once?" Yeseol snapped. "What if he comes back?" Their argument was interrupted by a sudden portal. Yeseol's heart leapt as she saw Ho-young step through, wounded but alive. Junsong, overwhelmed with relief, cheered as Ho-young's injuries began to heal. Meanwhile, in the mission, Ho-young remembered the guide's warning about the chieftain's red eyes. As the beast charged, its health ticking down, Ho-young knew he had 1 shot left. The chieftain thrust its sword at him. He dodged, letting it pierce a tree. "That could have been me," Ho-young muttered, a cold sweat dripping down his face. He realized he'd been using his sword wrong. Inspired by the chieftain's tactic, he decided to use its own momentum against it using stabbing. As the chieftain leapt at him, Ho-young steadied his blade, thrusting it forward. The beast's weight and speed drove the sword through its body, ending the battle. Flashback over, Yeseol ran to Ho-young, but Seong stepped in, sending her sprawling. Confused, she watched as Seong nervously hugged Ho-young. "I knew you'd make it back," big bro Seong exclaimed, sweat trickling down his face. "This guy's goofy, but I like it," Ho-young thought, bewildered. What the hell is going on? Ho-young wondered aloud. Seong laughed heartily. Of course, a lowly mission couldn't stop the strongest in the universe. Hearing that response while he also betrayed him, Ho-young just wanted to punch him. Ho-young barely had a moment to catch his breath when a voice rang out. "Did you really clear it?" A man approached, eyes narrowing suspiciously. He checked Ho-young's level and frowned. "How are you still only level 2 if you cleared it?" The crowd began to murmur, the skepticism spreading like wildfire. Ho-young sighed, recalling how people had always doubted him, even back in school when they accused him of cheating just because of his good grades. Weirdos, he thought. Someone in the back snickered. Maybe he just hid away and waited for it to finish like he did in the tutorial. Ho-young clenched his fists. He knew people's prejudices wouldn't change easily, but this was getting out of hand. Before he could speak, Yeseol stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "Enough. Stop running your mouths. He survived the mission, didn't he?" Hyung felt a wave of gratitude towards Yeseol. Seong stepped up beside her, puffing out his chest. "Big sis is right. Instead of celebrating Ho-young's return, you're all just ruining the mood. My big bro here, the strongest in the world, deserves better." Ho-young couldn't help but think Seong was nuts, but his antics were oddly comforting. Still, Ho-young knew he needed to show them something convincing. "I need to show you all something." The scene jumped forward to Ho-young revealing the boss's blade, a rare rank weapon with 15% increased attack power. He explained he managed to defeat the kobold's leader by using poisonous apples. The group gasped. "That's cheating," someone exclaimed. Junsong, eyes wide with surprise, said, "I can't believe you had a poisonous apple with you." "That item is more valuable than experience," Ho-young smirked. "Survival, huh? You all seem to have forgotten that you voted for me to die." The atmosphere grew tense. Faces froze, and Yeseol's worry deepened. Junho struggled but eventually spoke up. "He's right. I justified it as necessary, but it was pure selfishness. Voting for the lowest level was like silently targeting him." Junho bowed deeply. I'm truly sorry, but I'm glad you returned. Ho-young saw the sincerity in Junho's tears, but a woman scoffed. Why go so far? He came back, didn't he? Junho turned on her, furious. How dare you, Seo Injen? Don't you feel any guilt? She crossed her arms. Not for you to say when you voted for him first. Ho-young raised his hand to calm them. I didn't bring this up to reprimand you. It's to stop it from happening again. The tower is trying to divide us, create distrust, and lead us to ruin. The group listened, the weight of Ho-young's words sinking in. Returning from the death mission is an opportunity, he continued. We can defy the tower's intentions. Junsong, now hopeful, asked, what's your plan for the future? Ho-young looked up confidently. We'll find ways to ensure the most people survive and keep climbing the tower together. We'll get our old lives back. The group's spirits lifted. He's right, someone said. We can do this, Yeseol chimed in. We should all group together. Junho looked at Ho-young with newfound respect. I shouldn't have judged you. Suddenly, Kumkum appeared, looking grim. Unfortunate news. The next mission is a survival game. They were all shocked. Shouldn't you be at home? Kumkum nodded. Yes, but this mission is a battle royale among us. It's at a lower level, so we can catch up. He explained the rules. There will be 16 players and 16 doppelgangers. The goal is to slay all the doppelgangers who have the same stats and memories as us. No rewards for slaying doppelgangers, but slaying a player grants stats and gold. The group was shocked. You're just asking us to slay each other. Kumkum's expression hardened. Every 30 minutes without a slay, we'll be summoned to the lobby and face a disaster. A circle with a purple aura appeared in the room, a giant hand emerging from it. Ho-young's heart pounded as the hand smashed down where he stood. How am I supposed to fight this? He shouted, narrowly dodging. The hand struck where the group had been standing, but they all managed to avoid it. Ho-young managed to push Junho aside and slipped out of the giant's path just in time. He looked back to see the enormous creature looming over them. This is a disaster, he muttered. The other players began to tremble, fear gripping them tightly. They had barely passed the first floor, and now this? Some were too petrified to move. Hyung knew this was bad. The panic was spreading fast. The giant swung its massive arm toward one of the frightened players, but Ho-young leaped in and pushed them out of the way. The second floor mission hasn't even started yet. What's going on? Kumkum was pretending to be terrified, cowering behind a rock. Ho-young squinted at him, realizing that Kumkum might be putting on a show to lock everyone into the mission. Despite the danger, a smile crept onto Ho-young's face. This is just a taste of what's to come, he thought. It can't really harm us, right? But then, the giant smashed the ground again, sending players flying through the air. Junseong fired an arrow and Seong threw a boulder, but the giant effortlessly stopped both. Ho-young's heart sank. He had been wrong. This thing was trying to slay them. Yeseol began healing the injured players, but she looked exhausted. I'm running out of mana, she called out. Ho-young realized someone was going to get seriously hurt if this kept up. Junho pointed out that the giant was coming for round 2. Ho-young took a deep breath. Everyone, stand back. No time to worry about what others think. We need to stop it to save ourselves. He gripped his sword tightly and charged at the giant. As its fist came down, Ho-young let out a roar, using all his strength to stab and pierce through the fist, creating a hole and, to his shock, completely erasing the giant from existence. The players were stunned into silence, and even Ho-young couldn't believe what he had done. They started cheering, but he stared blankly at his sword, wondering if it was truly that powerful. A status window popped up, indicating he would be in an exhausted state for 3 minutes due to using strength beyond his limits. His vision narrowed, and he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. 3 minutes later, Ho-young opened his eyes to see everyone staring at him. His exhaustion had lifted, and the group quickly checked up on him. Junho, tears in his eyes, exclaimed, I'm so touched by how humble you are. Ho-young, still dazed, asked, what happened? Junho began to explain, but Kumkum snapped his fingers. It was sent back. Just a taste of what's to come, he said with a grin. Exciting, right? But remember, with the requirement that someone must be defeated every 30 minutes, the people standing around you might just be the ones to slay you in the end. Fear spread through the group again. Kumkum opened a portal, saying, my job here is done. See you later, and with that, he disappeared, leaving everyone speechless. Ho Young clenched his teeth. The intentions here are too obvious. We need to be careful. Back in the main room, the players began discussing strategies to find the doppelgangers. Some suggested marking each person, but since the doppelgangers shared their memories, they were out of ideas. Ho Young stood up. "I have a plan," Junsong asked. "What is it?" "During this mission, only I will defeat others. You all gather at the highest place on the floor. If anyone other than me defeats someone, consider that person a doppelganger and take them down." A special forces member named Sang asked skeptically, "Is that your entire plan?" Seo Yunjin spoke up. "You're strong, but you're a low level. Why should we listen to you?" Ho Young calmly replied, "Remember what Kumkum said. There's no reward for defeating a doppelganger, but if a player defeats another player, they gain stats and gold. This means everyone is a threat to one another. This plan stops the tower from playing us against each other." Yinjin scoffed. "How is that the best solution?" Junsong stepped in. "I agree with Ho Young. This is a good call. But how will you differentiate the doppelgangers?" Ho Young smirked. "I have my ways." The second floor mission started, and as Kumkum mentioned, there were 32 members in total. Seong angrily walked through the forest, grumbling about the plan. "This is too reckless, and I hate climbing mountains." He heard footsteps and hid behind a tree, sweating nervously. Ho Young called out, "How does a big guy like you think he can hide behind a tree?" Seong grinned. "It's just big, bro," he said, stepping out, only to be sliced clean in half by Ho Young. Blood splattered, and Ho Young, now soaked, stood firm. "One down," Ho Young muttered, his eyes scanning for the next threat. We flash back to when Ho Young first teleported in. He was staring at a glowing window, a smirk on his face. He had just reached a high enough stat level and sensitivity to receive a skill called Impeccable Senses, which would let him identify doppelgangers. Finally, he reached level 50 and obtained the skill, which would give him detailed information about someone within a certain radius. He had to spend over half of his gold to get it, but it was worth it. "Feels like my whole world has an improved filter of senses," he muttered, marveling at his heightened awareness. He could hear Song in the forest complaining loudly. Ho Young was surprised he could hear him from so far away, but soon caught a foul smell. "That's how I identified doppelgangers," he realized. Back in the present, after slaying Song, a window popped up showing the number of doppelgangers decreasing. It acted like the real thing until the end, he thought. He just hoped the rest of the group was listening to him. Thanks to Junsong agreeing, it seemed like everyone else did as well. But there was no telling if that was true. His face stiffened when he saw a message saying a player had died. How did a player die already? Was it a doppelganger or a player? He couldn't waste time thinking about it and dashed through the forest, determined to find the culprit. He climbed a tree, noting another player had been slain when he took out the doppelganger. Scanning the forest, he sensed something to his left and spotted a doppelganger over a body. "Gotcha," he yelled, flying at full speed toward the doppelganger. It tried to pretend to be human, but Ho Young wasn't fooled. He cut through the doppelganger, reducing their count. He paid his respects to the fallen player but noticed something odd. The doppelganger had a dull longsword, but the wound wasn't from a sword. It was from an arrow. He spotted Junsong with a bow drawn and realized the true threat. "Junsong, are you okay?" he called out. Junsong warned him to stay back. "I don't want to suspect you, but I can't tell who's real anymore." Ho Young pointed at the doppelganger he just slew. "Isn't this proof enough?" Junsong hesitated, but then dropped his bow. "You really are Ho Young," he admitted, collapsing. "Be careful of my doppelganger." Ho Young rushed over, helping him up. "If we stick together, we'll make it," he reassured. Junsong apologized, saying he should have stopped his doppelganger from escaping, but Ho Young comforted him. "It's not your fault. We're all victims here. Focus on escaping the tower." Suddenly, Ho Young sensed something. Yeseol and Junho emerged from the bushes, huffing. "Thank goodness you're alive," Yeseol panted. "We saw players had died." Yeseol went to heal Junsong, but Ho Young stepped between them. "They're doppelgangers." "Step back." Yeseol and Junho instantly shifted into fighting form. Junho charged at Ho Young, looking saddened. "Do you hold a grudge about the death mission?" he asked as they clashed blades. Junsong said he'd handle the other doppelganger. Ho Young wondered why the doppelgangers were revealing themselves so easily, especially if one had Yeseol's memories and knew his strength. She came up from behind, but he dodged her attack, surprised at her boldness. Junho tried to take advantage of the distraction, but Ho-young evaded his sneak attack effortlessly. He flipped through the air, landing gracefully, but an arrow flew straight at his head. It grazed his face, hitting a tree behind him. "That's a pity," a voice said. It was Jinong, standing with the doppelgangers. "I thought I'd gotten the checkmate," with flashback to when Ho-young first took down one of the replicas. Junsong was watching from the back, a smirk playing on his lips. He had a plan. A cunning one. He took an arrow from his quiver, and with a grim determination, he stabbed himself in the back with it. Junsong used to be a fisherman before all this chaos, and now he planned to use himself as bait in this twisted game of human fishing. Flashback ends. Junsong, speaking in a menacingly without realizing it, chuckled, got too excited there. "So, Ho-young, what are you feeling right now?" "Betrayed." Angry, he tried to stifle his laughter, but Ho-young beat him to it, letting out a hearty laugh instead. "I was wondering when you'd show your true colors," Ho-young said. Grinning, "Turns out you're crazier than I thought." Junsong's smirk widened. "Talking like you knew I'd backstab you," Ho-young shrugged. "Well, when I carried you, I saw your status window. Your stats increased a lot. It made me curious." Junsong was silent for a moment before he replied, "You're more interesting as time goes by." Ho-young cut to the chase. "Enough chit-chat. Why are you doing this? Gold and stats. Worth slaying others for them." Junsong's eyes gleamed. "Need a reason? There are no penalties here. I am getting rewards for slaying people. I'd be dumb not to exploit this." Ho-young sidestepped an arrow aimed at his head and rushed straight toward Junsong, realizing the man was a full-blown psychopath. The other doppelgangers readied their weapons. Junho's doppelganger swung at Ho-young, who leaped over it, using the momentum for a spinning back kick that sent the doppelganger crashing through the trees. Another arrow flew in, but Ho-young sliced through it. A second arrow followed closely, grazing his head and leaving a hole in a nearby tree. Ho-young landed on his feet, realizing Junsong hadn't shown all his cards yet. Junho's doppelganger returned, and fake yahello began healing him. Ho-young was now trapped between them all. "This combination is really strong," Ho-young muttered, "and has no openings." He glanced at Junsong. "Not sure how you convinced the doppelgangers, but you've prepared quite a bit." Junsong chuckled. "If you want a big fish, you have to prepare at least this much. But this is better. I can enjoy watching you struggle." Ho-young remained unfazed. Junsong prepared 3 more arrows, drawing them back and signaling the doppelgangers to move. The arrows flew toward Ho-young, accompanied by a pincer attack from the doppelgangers. As the arrows neared his face, Ho-young's sense skill activated, expanding around him. "This party is well made," he admitted, analyzing their stats. But it's not enough his stats were too good to be true. He sliced through the arrows while slashing Junho's doppelganger across the chest. Yesiel's doppelganger tried to heal him, but her hand was sliced off. Ho-young quickly finished off both doppelgangers, reducing their count. Ho-young slowly walked towards Junsong, who was now laughing nervously. Stricken with fear, Junsong dropped to his knees. Ho-young thought he was trying something, but Junsong just started dramatically crying, begging for his life. "I got obsessed with the rewards," Junsong sobbed. "Lost the sauce. I saw how good you were and crossed a line I shouldn't have. Just this once, please." Suddenly, Junsong stood up, shouting, "Go to hell," and lunged at Ho-young with an arrow. Ho-young swung his blade, cutting Junsong's head and sending it flying through the air. "Damn," Junsong muttered in his final moments, realizing Ho-young wasn't just a slightly bigger fish. He was a relentless monster. Ho-young's sword dripped with blood as he watched the death count update in the window. Guilt tugged at his heart, but before he could dwell on it, another window popped up announcing he had slayed the Star Killer. Now, the message said, he would take that place, a red aura swirling around him, signaling an offer from the doppelganger's support and a huge benefit. The mist began to form into the faint shape of a woman who extended her hand to Ho-young. Ho-young stood frozen, realizing this was how Junsong had controlled the doppelgangers. Legendary equipment, skills, and an exclusive trait were within reach. He gulped audibly, conflicted. Slaying doppelgangers was one thing, they weren't human. But accepting this offer meant he would face situations where he'd have to fight humans, and one of them might even become the Star Killer. The woman smiled as he contemplated his decision. With a resolute swipe, Ho-young dismissed the window. He refused to become a crazy psychopath like Junsong. Determined, he continued his journey and soon met up with the real Yi Seol and the others. Seong, ever the comic relief, transformed into a cute, innocent waifu, asking, "Why so late, big bro?" Planning to slay us with suspense, Ho-young chuckled. "I should slay you now for that terrible joke." He praised the group, acknowledging their efforts in following his risky plan. As they regrouped, doppelgangers mingled with their real counterparts. They looked to Ho-young, wondering how he would distinguish between them. "Thanks for following my instructions and being on time," he said. Just then, the fake Ho-young sauntered up, adding to the confusion. A tense silence filled the air as the real and fake Ho-young had to stare down. "This has gotten complicated," Ho-young admitted. "I wanted to slay my doppelganger before things got messy, but thanks to Junsong, my plan is ruined. Now it's me versus my doppelganger." A random player, whose name Ho-young couldn't quite remember, piped up, asking Ho-young to explain. "Have you been slaying doppelgangers? Who are they?" Ho-young thought for a moment. "There are 8 people with either a slayed doppelganger or a slayed player. If I reveal the 5 doppelgangers I've slayed, it'll confirm who's good." Both Ho-young and his doppelganger began listing the names of doppelgangers they had taken down. The group was stunned. "This is what it's come to," Ho-young said. Fake Ho-young jumped in. "Think about it. Both Seong and Yiseol were in my party, and I slayed their doppelgangers first. What are the odds?" The group murmured, torn between the 2 Ho-youngs. Doppelganger continued. "If the other Ho-young is right, that means Junsong here is a doppelganger, which means he slayed the real Junsong. But Junsong was our leader. How could he die so easily? Even if it's the real Ho-young, how can we trust a slayer?" The players began to panic, weapons drawn, ready to slay Ho-young and the other doppelgangers. Seong and Yiseol tried to calm them, but the tension was palpable. Ho-young, surprisingly calm, praised his doppelganger for its cunning move. "Doppelganger is right. I did slay Junsong," he admitted. Doppelganger smirked. "Giving up already? Disappointing. But there's something even my doppelganger doesn't know. Junsong was a traitor." Ho-young/Junsong's doppelganger in front of everyone, silencing the group. The real Junsong had been a traitor all along, and Ho-young had played his final, winning card. Junsong fell to the floor, a dramatic look of betrayal in his eyes. The doppelganger screamed, "What are you doing? Are you just going to do whatever you want?" Junho stepped forward, his face puzzled. "Wait a minute. What do you mean Junsong is a traitor?" He looked at Ho-young. "Does that mean the real Ho-young slayed the doppelganger just now and got us all together here?" Ho-young nodded. "Yes, when a player slays a doppelganger, it's revealed immediately. But if I can tell who a doppelganger is, it proves I'm the real one. And yes, Junsong was a traitor. He wore the mask of a good person, hiding his true nature, waiting for the right chance to strike." One of the players, Injin, began to shake. "How dare you insult Junsong?" She dashed forward, tears streaming down her face, but stopped dead in her tracks as she was shot in the back by a doppelganger. The notification flashed a player had fallen. The group tensed, now on high alert. Junsong laughed. "This is the expression I wanted to see," but before he could say more, he was stabbed in the throat, revealing he was indeed a doppelganger. Sechang popped out from behind a bush. "Sorry for doubting you. What do we do now?" Ho-young was surprised but grateful for Sechang's help. The other players, now convinced he was the real Ho-young, wielded their swords, waiting for his instructions. Ho-young recalled the death gate. "This feels like déjà vu," he said. "I'll tell you my final plan." Just then, Ho-young's doppelganger leaped for a surprise attack. Ho-young blocked it effortlessly. "Their stats are from when we first entered the 2nd floor. We're stronger now, and they can't keep up." The group began to raise their stats, growing more powerful by the second. With their newfound strength, they cleared the mission, though they did lose a few players. An Sechang looked disappointed. "If it wasn't for that traitor, nobody would have fallen," he muttered, likely reflecting on his time in Junsong's party. Ho-young nodded, thinking, "I'm disappointed too. I didn't want anyone to fall. The situation in other regions is probably worse since they probably don't have someone with a sage status window, so some likely took the Starkiller's path. The fights from here on will only get more intense. Even though I'm still weak, there's a reason I have the Sage's Guide. I haven't experienced many good things so far, but I'm glad to have people who trust me. I'll do my best to save as many as possible." HN Sechang approached Ho-young. "Thank you. I survived because of you," Ho-young smiled. "It was because everyone listened." Sechang nodded. "Since you're still only level 2, you must have been given a special ability in exchange for your slower leveling. Your decision-making and adaptability are incredible. You'll be very useful in the future." He bowed deeply. "I'm truly sorry for doubting and looking down on you." The others followed suit, apologizing sincerely. Ho-young waved them off. "It's fine," Seong laughed. "We're all bad at seeing someone's potential. We should have been on the Ho-young Express from day one." Yi-seol playfully argued, "I was the first to discover it." Meanwhile, Jun-ho was in the corner, biting his fist, tears in his eyes. Thinking he would apologize more politely with teary eyes so that he does not lose to his Ho-young, Se-chang added, "It might be shameless, but I would like you to lead us from now on." Ho-young was taken aback, but then smiled warmly. "That sounds good to me." 5 minutes before completing the scenario, as they searched for the last doppelganger, they discovered it was Se-chang. His soldier instinct showed up and was hiding in a bush, adding a humorous twist to their intense journey. The system had just calculated their gold rewards based on their contributions, and the room buzzed with excitement. As the amounts were revealed, everyone was taken aback by how much gold they were receiving. Seong, unable to contain his joy, burst into laughter and struck a dramatic bodybuilding pose, flexing his newfound wealth of 2,000 gold coins. Ho-young, ever the introvert, distanced himself slightly but smiled warmly, seeing that everyone had been rewarded. His own reward, a staggering 12,500 gold coins. A notification popped up on Ho-young's interface, announcing that his shop rank would increase due to his fortune exceeding 10,000 gold. He was stunned. So this is how the shop works, he mused, learning that higher ranks meant access to rare items. Without hesitation, he began browsing through the shop's inventory and decided to purchase a mysterious skill for 5,000 gold. The skill boosted his basic swordsmanship to level 3. "This is a steal," he exclaimed. Satisfied with his purchases, Ho-young turned to Yi-seol and handed her 1,500 gold. "Why are you giving me this?" Yi-seol asked, surprised. "You deserve it," Ho-young replied. "When we fought the kobolds and the doppelgangers, things would have been much harder without you. In a place that wants us to slay each other to survive, the reason we can laugh carefree like this and help one another is because of you." Yi-seol blushed with happiness and promised to become stronger, leveling up her healing abilities. Meanwhile, Ho-young gifted Seong 200 gold, encouraging him to keep up the good work. Seong, always the joker, transformed into a cute anime waifu and saluted, "Your wish is my command." Ho-young rolled his eyes, unsheathing his sword. "It's time to test my new swordsmanship." The scene transitioned quickly to the 3rd floor of the labyrinth, where their next mission awaited a siege mission. For the first time, they would meet players from other regions. Their objective was to attack a castle and seize its altar within 24 hours, though the penalty for failure remained unknown. Ho-young displayed a rare item they had obtained, a return crystal usable only on the 3rd floor. The other players speculated nervously about its purpose, with some fearing they might have to slay others. Ho-young inspected his status window and called out to Seong, "Will you do everything I ask?" Ho-young demanded, swinging his sword menacingly. Seong, not one to back down, made a mocking face but agreed reluctantly. Soon, he was walking towards the mountains, complaining, "This is too much for 100 gold coins. He could have just told me I wouldn't stay extinct even if I was slain here." The return crystal, after all, granted the ability to respawn. Arriving at the castle gate, Seong took a deep breath. "I'll destroy it all," he declared, launching a powerful punch that cracked the gate, reducing its durability. He continued his assault until the gate shattered, opening a path for the others. "No gate can withstand my power," he boasted, only to see the gate respawn behind him. Inside, Seong spotted 2 ranged players atop the castle and ahead, about 10 people guarding what he assumed was the altar. Ho-young had instructed him not to slay anyone so they wouldn't discover the true purpose of the return crystal. Seong grinned smugly, believing they were all afraid of him, until an attack struck his head, causing him to bleed from his nose. He kneeled in pain, realizing a girl on the altar had shot him with a magic bullet. Ho-young, receiving Seong's frantic report, was shocked. A gun. That shouldn't be possible at this stage unless they gain some legendary quest. Then he realizes that she might have accepted a Star Killer quest, earning her the firearm. He knew this would be a tough battle, but Yi-seol grabbed his shoulder reassuringly. "Don't worry, I've got your back," she said. Ho-young crouched low, his impeccable sense skills zooming on the guards patrolling the castle wall. He noted that both guards were level 8, just as Seong had mentioned. Seong, always eager to make an entrance, strode forward boldly and shouted, "Guess who's back?" Yi-seol cautioned, "If they see him, won't they understand what the return crystals do? Ho Young shrugged. They might think about it, but they won't be sure. They'll just assume it's a Seong special. As the archers took aim at Seong, Ho Young sprang into action. The archers released their arrows, but Ho Young, with lightning reflexes, sliced them in half mid-air. "This is our chance," he yelled, using Seong's shoulder as a springboard to launch himself up the castle wall. He soared above the archers, dispatching them with swift precision before landing gracefully. "We just need this one opportunity," he declared. Junho laughed. "The enemies will now understand the return crystal's use. We need to defeat them quickly." Seong charged toward the gate, promising to destroy it with just 5 hits. "Follow closely," he called. But just as he reared back for a punch, he was shot in the face. The gate, shattered in one hit from the gun, fell apart as Isiel quickly healed Seong. Ho Young, puzzled, wondered aloud, "What's going on?" One of the archers started laughing, taunting, "You should slay us when you had the chance. That mindset will cost you dearly." The gun woman stood menacingly as the archer continued, "The mad woman will take advantage of your lack of conviction to slay you all." Ho Young realized the grim truth. She accepted the star killer role. Her stats are no joke. That's Sun Seo-yeon, level 13. She must have slayed a lot on the second floor before Ho Young could react. Seo-yeon shifted her aim and shot him in the shoulder. "She's quicker than I thought," he muttered, lifting his coat to reveal leather armor. "I'm hella glad I prepared for this." He calculated quickly. Each shot costs 10 MP. If her shop rank is the same as mine, she can't afford mana recovery potions. She should only have 13 shots left. Ho Young leaped off the castle wall, signaling the group to charge. Sechang, employing a shadow clone, darted in front of the group as a bullet flew towards them, hitting one of the players. "How do we dodge those bullets?" the player asked in a panic. "Zigzag behind cover," Sechang suggested, but Ho Young had a different plan. "She can't use her bullets indefinitely. She'll run out of MP. We need to tank 1 bullet each and push forward." As they advanced, Yseol continued her healing support, whilst Eoyeon realized her strategy wasn't working. Frustrated, she kicked her man's stool forward, urging him to attack. "This will decide everything," Ho Young announced. "If a fight breaks out, people will get slayed by her bullets. We need to reach the altar quickly." An enemy leaped at Ho Young, but he sidestepped and countered with a knee to the chest. Another foe thrust a sword at him, but he ducked and pivoted, delivering a strike to the back of the neck. Suddenly, he saw a bullet flying toward his face. Junho screamed and deflected the shot, but it twisted his hand and sent his sword spinning into the air. Seo-yeon noticed their reactions to her shots. Junho, in a desperate move, called out, "Ho Young, move quickly," but before he could finish, Seo-yeon's next bullet struck him down. Ho Young's frustration boiled over. She knows they'll return after slaying, but how can she stay so emotionless while murdering people? More of their team began falling to her bullets, and he gritted his teeth. "This group is pretty interesting," Seo-yeon mused with a cold smile. Determined, Ho Young gripped his sword firmly, activating his level 3 basic swordsmanship. He sliced through enemies with precision, reaching the base of the altar. Pushing off the floor, he launched himself towards Seo-yeon, who readied her pistol with a steely gaze. Their collision sent sparks flying and a shockwave rippling through the air. Seong, observing the chaos, shouted, "We're in for it now." The enemy looked puzzled, but Seong grinned. "Now that big bro's reached the altar, we don't need to hold back anymore." He smashed the floor, sending foes tumbling backward. Ho Young and Seo-yeon locked eyes, thinking it was a battle between good and evil. She arched an eyebrow. "You're pretty strong for a level 2. What's your secret?" Ho Young smirked. "You're the weird one." Being level 13 this early, a blue circle appeared under Ho Young's foot, moving around the altar. A window popped up. Altar occupied 1/3. He realized they needed 3 people to occupy it. Before he could strategize, Seo-yeon pulled the trigger. Ho Young dodged, lunging forward with his sword. "I need to get rid of her now," he muttered. She blocked his strike with her gun, deflecting his stabs. "How are you reacting so fast?" she wondered aloud. Her eyes narrowed as she noticed his sword's unusual design. She leaped over him, firing 2 shots mid-air, but he dodged effortlessly. "Did you predict my move?" she asked, landing and facing him. Ho Young's grin widened. The scene shifted to a brief backstory on Junho, who was a renowned table tennis player. In high-level matches, players don't rely solely on their eyes to return shots. They read their opponent's posture and gaze, predicting their next move. That's why Junho's nickname was the genius of prediction. Watching Junho had given Ho-young the idea to anticipate Seo-yeon's attacks. Back in the present, Seo-yeon began to sweat bullets as Ho-young sliced across her waist. His blade cut through a pillar behind her, which collapsed to the floor. She had managed to deflect his strike with her gun, but it still scratched her face. She realized his stats were superior to hers. Seong and the rest of the team announced their success, urging Ho-young to finish up. Seo-yeon, eyes widening with realization, exclaimed, "The crystals must let you revive." Ho-young nodded. "Yes, but that's useless for you to know now. Even if you have a hidden skill, I can tank one hit and end this," she smirked. "Do you really think you've won?" Seo-yeon began upgrading her firing skills. "This is bad," Ho-young muttered, rushing in. She fired 2 shots, punching holes through him. The rest of the team shouted, running to his aid as he faded out. The mission ended, and Seong looked downcast. At the lobby, Ho-young, reappearing beside Seong, asked, "What's wrong?" "We won," Seong sighed. "I carried this time, but my reward is so small." Ho-young nodded, still processing the rapid shots. "I didn't expect that, but I still managed to stab her." Seo-yeon, as she faded away, called out, "I'll remember your name." Ho-young hoped not to encounter Seo-yeon again. Then 3 of them stood on the altar, making them victorious. Lee suddenly shouted, "Look!" A portal opened, showing the group they had just fought. They were now facing a colossal disaster, those who hadn't slayed anyone falling victim to a giant's wrath. The group banged on the rift, pleading for help. Yesiol tried to touch the portal, but it shocked her away. The giant began its brutal assault. Each stomp was accompanied by gut-wrenching sounds. Bodies lay everywhere, and a man who had begged for help was turned into a gruesome mess. Ho-young watched disgusted as the massacre unfolded. Only one player survived, Seo-yeon. She stepped forward, now part of their group, wiping blood from her face. "Filthy," she muttered. Ho-young's unease grew. "Now I know why I felt so uneasy," he said, eyeing Seo-yeon warily. The scene cuts to a ruined city, where a group stands amidst the wreckage, their eyes scanning the devastated landscape. They ponder the goal of this floor when a window appears, displaying the quest 6 hours from now. A disaster will descend upon the city. Slay all the monsters that appear and secure the escape portals, which will appear randomly. Only 20 portals will be available, and each player will be assigned a portal. One of them, grinning, says, "Glad to fight some monsters. And with only 13 of us, we don't need to worry since there are 20 portals." Seong strikes a most muscular pose, flexing his biceps, not knowing he will meet his long-lost brother here. Yesiol frowns. Does that mean others can't use their portals? Is there a limit to the monsters that appear? Junho suggests the extra portals might be a trap. Hn Sechang nods. "We should go through the portals as soon as they open." Junho agrees. "Let's all agree to leave immediately." Yesiol notices Seong looking worried. "Why the face, Seong?" He shrugs. "It's just how I look." Ho-young smiles. "After coming this far together, it seems we all understand what must be done." He turns, his smile faltering, as Sun Seo-yeon approaches. She crosses her arms. "Why should I go along with this? If you try to order me, I'll slay you." Everyone adopts a determined expression, along with Ho-young. "We should just jump her and get this over with," someone mutters. Flashback to 12 hours ago, Seong confronts Iwayan. "Don't act tough. Without that gun, you'd be useless." Seo-yeon's response is immediate and brutal. She crushes him with a fist and follows up with a kick, drilling him into the floor. The rest of the group is stunned by how easily she overpowered him. "Think you have multiple lives, trash?" She sneers. Ho-young steps in. "You're in our territory. Stop messing around." He had tried his best to rid their group of a potential star killer, only to find someone who had already accepted it. She steps in front of him. "We meet again." He narrows his eyes. "Do you have something to say? We shouldn't be this friendly." He feels like a target is on his back and creates distance. Another window appears, providing guidance, though his reaction is telling. She walks away, looking determined. Flashback ends. Seong is facing an orc who looks like his brother from another mother. "Sorry, buddy, but you're about to become my experience points." Poor orc thought he got slayed by his fellow orc. Seong sees a portal open, looking surprised since he had only slain a few monsters. He looks tired, then turns the corner, smiling, only to jump in surprise at seeing Ho Young. Seong nervously asks, "What are you doing here, big bro?" Ho Young raises an eyebrow. "Why are you surprised?" "Did you do something wrong?" Seong laughs awkwardly. "No, I thought you'd have opened your portal already." Ho Young smirks. "You opened a portal, right?" Seong sighs. "You're too sharp. I wanted to keep it a secret." Ho Young kicks him into the portal. "I knew you'd try something." One problem was taken care of. Back to the guide, the window warns Ho Young that when the Day of Blood arrives, the Star Killer unlocks all their traits. He needs to level up a lot before then. Ho Young doesn't know the date but realizes it will give Lee Seoyan a huge advantage. A level 10 orc charges Ho Young, stating he will slay a low-level human who is still level 2. He swiftly slices its head off. "I need to grind," he mutters, but no portal opens. Despite being able to slay all the monsters, he knows not everyone has escaped yet. He also needs to be careful of Seoyan. While slaying monsters, he catches a rotten smell and covers his nose. What the hell is this? The guide window pops up. Orcs with strong smells open portals. Ho Young turns, spotting a particularly smelly orc. "I found you, stinky pig." He runs in, slicing the orc in half and creating a portal for his escape. Then the scene cuts to Seoyan, visibly annoyed with Ho Young. "Why am I so unlucky? I can't believe I haven't found a portal yet," he exclaims. Seoyan rolls her eyes. "Are you usually this unlucky?" Ho Young sighs. "I told you, I've never won anything in my life. This kind of mission is the worst for me." He mutters to himself, "I'm intentionally avoiding orcs that open portals. Because Sun Seoyan Neon needs to slay me on the Day of Blood, she has no choice but to let me slay the orcs instead. If I get slayed here without securing a portal, it'd be bad for her too. But I've actually secured one." Then a window appears. A certain player has opened a portal. Remaining escape portals 5. Ho Young looks exasperated. "Great. I have only 5 portals left. I have yet to get one." This is why people curse random luck games. Seoyan, with a face scarier than a nightmare, yells, "Stop talking and focus on the hunt." Ho Young obediently complies. While slaying the orcs, Ho Young muses, "Every time I cut down an orc, I feel both sorry and pleasantly refreshed. These contradictory feelings are like my relationship with Seoyan. I thought I'd see her worried about me just so she could slay me." He then states that I'm the one who hasn't found a portal. "Why are you the anxious one?" She snaps, "Who said I'm anxious?" Then Ho Young asks her about how many portals she opened. 5, she replies. Then Ho Young thinks that's a lot, but it's still within the buffer. If the remaining people each open 1 portal, that leaves only 3 more. Time to split up then. Whoa, only 10 minutes left. I'll go find a portal on my own. You go ahead. Wait, she says, making him stop. Do you have more business with me? He asks. She mumbles, unable to speak clearly. Ho Young thinks something's off. I need to get out of here. He maintains his distance, drawing his sword, but she grabs his shirt, making a cute face. I forgot the locations of all the portals I opened, she states. Is she really stupid despite her crazy looks? He wonders. Ho Young and Seoyan return to the lobby. Seong notices them and jumps towards Ho Young, trying to make a cute face but failing miserably. While running towards him, Seong said, Big brother, you're finally back. I knew you'd come. Ho Young punches him before he can act like a heroine, sending him rolling like a cannonball. Geez, that scared me. I thought my mission wasn't complete yet, Ho Young says. Seoyan smirks. Come to think of it, he resembles an orc. Ho Young whispers, you should not speak that loud. Yesiel and Junho join them. Yesiel smiles and says, Seoyan, you made it back safely too. Junho extends his hand. That's a relief. Even though we were enemies in the past, you're our teammate now. I look forward to working with you from now on. Seoyan thinks he is noisy and turns her back. Seong, while touching his face, states they should have left her to go extinct on 4th flower. Then she shuts him up, calling him a pig, flexing his muscles, and states, What? These aren't fats, they're muscles. Ho Young thinks, should I have left her back there? It doesn't make sense that the killer star, blessed by the system, would get lost and die. Let's just take this as a chance to get her indebted to me. Although I still need to be wary of her, I don't think she'll do anything until the day of blood. It should be fine for now. I guess everyone's gotten a little used to things now. Suddenly, Kum appears, stating, "Your cutie pie's here." Seoyeon shoots at him, exclaiming, "That damn rabbit." Kum changes his form into that of a huge monster. "Wow, what an intense greeting. Even though we haven't seen each other for a while," he says, then kicks her, sending her crashing into a wall. "That monster rabbit," she mutters. Ho-young thinks it sent her flying easily. Considering the stats it has, maybe it went easy on her. Does that mean the killer star is that important in this tower? Kum, while fixing his mask, states, "Calm down a little. Now it's time to go on the next mission." Kum dramatically transformed the lobby into a grand library. From now on, he declared, "Each of you must choose one book. This book will either help you survive or lead to your demise. The choice is yours, so choose wisely." And Seong scoffed, "Like hell, I'm letting a mere book decide my fate." Junho, lost in thought, wondered, "Could I become stronger if I find a sword technique manual?" Kum continued, "You can't reveal the contents of the book to anyone else. And remember, all the books here will vanish once the mission on the 5th floor starts. Choose a book you won't regret." With that, he left the room. 2 random participants muttered, "What? Did he just say hasten?" Another voice urged, "Start looking for the book you'll need." Ho-young observed, "It looks like everyone is gravitating towards categories related to their classes. It makes sense anything else would be a waste of time in this situation." As he browsed, a guide window popped up, suggesting a book titled SSS Rank Returner's Monopoly of Connections in the novel section. "You want me to waste my time on a novel?" he thought incredulously. The status window confirmed his choice. "You've chosen the SSS Rank Returner's Monopoly of Connections. You cannot change your book or reveal its content to anyone else." Ho-young sighed. "Wow, what a useless title. But I'm sure there's a reason for this recommendation. Let's read it first." As he read, he came across the terms thawing swordsmanship, punch of the fist king, and knowledge of Eastern medicine. And he thought of his comrades as they shared the same common skill name. "Damn it," he muttered. "I feel like I've lost. Maybe I should have chosen a sword technique or martial arts manual." A loud noise interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Secheng hitting a huge nail with a shovel to make a tent. What kind of book did Secheng read? He wondered. Another loud bang drew his attention to Seoyeon, who was engrossed in a book of curses. Best to avoid her, he decided. Suddenly, they were all transported to the 5th floor, which resembled a classroom. Ho-young noticed some unfamiliar faces, frozen in time. 2 girls whispered, "Come to think of it, doesn't it feel like we've gotten younger?" The other replied, "Yeah, you're right. Could it be that we've returned to our student days to fit the mission background?" Secheng cried out in despair, "My muscles are gone. I'm skinny." Seong laughed at him, but Ho-young wondered who that was but remembered he was just Kim Seong with a shaved head now. Ho-young noticed Ezeol looking even more beautiful in her younger form. Beside him, he saw someone and called out, "Are you Sun Seoyeon?" She was wearing glasses and looked like a nerd. "What are you looking at?" she snapped, turning away with a blush. She's not any different still with that attitude, Ho-young thought with a chuckle. An announcement echoed through the room. "Are you treasuring your youth that you've returned to? The 5th floor mission is role-playing. This place is another dimension where humans and monsters exist. From now on, you are cadets at an academy that trains monster hunters. For the next 4 days, quests will appear from time to time. Fail a quest, and you face the death mission, so give it your best shot." 2 players whispered anxiously, "If we lose even one quest, we're dead." Ho-young thought, "Although I survived the death mission, it'll be hard for a normal player to survive it. I knew I should have chosen a sword technique manual instead of a useless novel." Kum provided them with the memories needed for the roleplay mission. Ho-young, touching his head, marveled, "This is really fascinating. It feels like I have 2 sets of memories, the new ones and my real ones." After the class, Kum announced, "After class ends, the quests will start. Enjoy the present as much as you can." As the professor droned on about mana, everyone grew bored and sleepy. The frozen people began moving again. Ho-young thought, if we're in a novel, then I'm just an extra. And that guy, he's the novel's protagonist, Oh Yunam. He's a returnee who knows the future. Thanks to his information, He was able to monopolize numerous connections with people and places and became the strongest. The professor asked a question and no one answered. Ho-young thought, as they just transferred, they could not answer. Originally, Oh-yoonum was supposed to answer this. As Oh-yoonum was raising his hand, Ho-young beat him to it, giving the correct answer. Everyone, including the professor, was shocked. The professor thought Ho-young is a genius. Ho-young gained some store points and realized, now I understand why the guide suggested this novel. A sword technique manual? Martial arts manual? I don't need those. All those connections you're after, I'll get them all first, he muttered, looking at the novel's protagonist. 4 of them were strolling outside their school, enjoying the scenery. Seong turned to Ho-young and asked, Big bro, that answer, how'd you know about it? Ho-young replied, it was in the memories that were given to me. Of course this was a lie. Wow, Seong exclaimed. Maybe only you have good character. Ho-young, with a hint of sarcasm, said, go talk to the tower yourself if you're jealous. Yiseo asked, when do you think the quest will start? Ho-young thinks, based on what I saw in the novel, it should be right about now. Then a window suddenly popped up, reminding them of the quest. The mission was to clear the dungeon within 60 minutes, and the penalty for failing is death. Ho-young knew the item that dropped from the boss monster of this dungeon was extremely important. Originally, Oh-yoonum was supposed to get it, but Ho-young wasn't about to let that happen. Let's hurry up, Ho-young commanded, and they all sprinted towards the quest. They entered the dungeon, which was an orc den. Yoonam, already there, was taken aback when he saw them. How did they get here? Yoonam wondered aloud, but Ho-young was already sprinting towards an orc, slaying it effortlessly. Did you think you were the only one capable of finding this place? Ho-young taunted. Yoonam was puzzled. It's strange. I don't know how they found this place, but were the cadets in my class this strong? Especially Ho-young and Seo-yeon, there's no way I'd forget people that strong. He started to worry that they might steal what he considered his. Determined, he generated a spear and started slaying orcs with tremendous power, shocking everyone around him. Ho-young, watching, thought, that's the power of the protagonist. Seeing him in real life, he looks way more overpowered. He won't just hand over the dungeon reward easily, then let's see who wins here. With this momentum, a window displayed the remaining time in monsters, remaining time 48 minutes, remaining monsters 72 100ths. Ho-young calculated. We'll be able to clear the quest without any issues. But if we want to get the dungeon reward, we need to slay the most orcs to get the right to challenge the boss monster. The current Oh-yoonum is definitely stronger than me. However, I can use my impeccable sense to detect the orcs. Seo-yeon, noticing Ho-young might get ahead, ripped her skirt, which was dulling her reflexes. The 3 of them continued to slay the orcs, as if they were in a competition to see who could slay more. Yeseol and Juhan watched from the sidelines. Yeseol, impressed, thought, those 3 are amazing. But Ho-young is acting more desperate than usual. The 3 of them have puppy eyes and fragile looks, and Juhan, understanding Ho-young's intentions, says he's showing us that noble heart of his that doesn't want to see us being sent to the death mission. With newfound resolve, Juhan rallied everyone. He's going so far for us, the ones who voted him into the death mission so we could survive. Let's give our best for the sake of our light, Ho-young. While they were shouting encouragement, Ho-young was lost in thought. Then, a status window popped up, stating, the orcs have been exterminated. The boss room has appeared. The person who has obtained the right to challenge the boss monster is Oh-yoonum. Ho-young, feeling down, thought I worked so hard, and even that wasn't enough. Do I have to just give up like this? At this rate, I might not be able to grow stronger until Red Blood Day appears. Desperate, he turned to Yoonam and asked, can you give me the right to challenge the boss monster? Yoonam, annoyed and surprised, retorted, what are you talking about? Ho-young continued, don't you want to know the way to end these chains of regressions? Yoonam, now furious, wondered, how does he know about that? Yoonam pointed his spear at Ho-young, his eyes blazing with suspicion. Who on earth are you? He demanded. Ho-young, maintaining his calm, requested, could you please put that spear away first? But Yoonam wasn't having it. How did you know I'm a regressor? He pressed on. Ho-young smirked slightly. Does it matter how I know? Don't you want to know the future? What happens when you're 32 years old, in the middle of winter? The regression started in November when you were 17, right? Suddenly, Yunam was hit with a vivid flashback. It was a rainy day, and Yunam was slipping and sliding while talking to another man about his regression. The man nodded, confirming, yes, that's right. A life lived repeatedly from 17 to 32. I envy you. As Yunam hears that, his face twists in frustration. He always said he wanted to see the winter when he was 32. But due to this cursed regression, he can't. Back to the present, Ho-young seized the moment. If you let me challenge the boss, I'll tell you how to end the chains of regression. It's been your dream for millennia. You'll have no choice but to accept my request. Yunam's eyes narrowed. If you're just fooling around, things are going to get really ugly for you. With that, he stormed off, leaving Ho-young to his thoughts. Cut to Ho-young opening the door to the boss room. A massive, intimidating orc lumbered towards him. Ho-young's heart pounded, but he forced himself to remain calm. He states the novel didn't have information on its level or a guide, but he knows how to beat it. His first strategy was to block the sound. The orc roared, a sound so powerful it would make most challengers lose their will to fight. But Ho-young wasn't among the many challengers. His impeccable senses could block out the sound, rendering the mind attack useless. He charged at the orc. The second strategy, he murmured to himself. Its upper body is hard as steel, but its legs are weak. He swiftly slashed at the orc's legs, bringing the beast crashing to the ground. With one final, decisive cut, the orc was split in half. A window popped up, stating that the orc had dropped an item and the quest was complete. Ho-young grinned. The reward is all mine. The scene shifted to a lively pub where Ho-young and Seong were playing rock, paper, scissors. Seong, visibly frustrated by losing yet again, glared at Ho-young. Are you cheating? He asked. Ho-young chuckled. You can't cheat in rock, paper, scissors. Ho-young's mind drifted. There are only two mythical items in this novel. One is Gungnir, Yunam's weapon, an overpowered item that always hits its target. The other is the Ring of Nikki. Simple, but as powerful as Gungnir. It will be reliable insurance at the numerous turning points to come. Yunam would have to progress without this ring, but I intend to give him the information he needs. After all, there's only one thing he wants in this novel. His thoughts were interrupted by Asioyan slamming a cup of coffee on the table. Now it's my turn to play rock, paper, scissors, she declared, challenging Ho-young. He thinks to himself, rock, paper, scissors isn't just luck. It's agility, and I have close to 50 agility stats, so there's no way I can lose. Seoyan confidently stated, I'll bet 3,000 coins. Ho-young grinned. Make it 5,000. The scene cut to the next day, at the university assembly. The students were lined up, ready to evaluate their strength by striking a punch machine. The professor explained the rules, stating that the cadets should use their weapons to attack the crystal, which would then display their magic power. He further mentioned that the points from this exercise would be used to form their dungeon practical groups in 2 days. Junho expressed his excitement, stating that he wanted to see how strong the cadets were. The exam began with cadet number 1, who charged and struck the crystal with the confidence of a main character, but only scored 43 points. From the reactions of others, Junho deduced that the guy might be pretty strong to get that many cheers. Ho-young, recalling a memory, mentioned that this person was somewhat strong. Next, it was Junho's turn, and he scored 69 points. The other cadets were shocked to realize how strong Junho was. Then, a shirtless Seong stepped in, declaring that punching machines were a piece of cake for him. He took his stance, hit the crystal, and scored 75 points. Seong began flexing his muscles while others were surprised that he scored so high without any weapon. Seoyan then took her turn, shooting the crystal and nearly hitting Seong's head. She scored 98 points, leaving the other cadets in shock, believing it was impossible to score that high. Ho-young, feeling proud, thought to himself that his tower friends were indeed stronger than the cadets. Yunam then took his chance and scored 115 points. Ho-young, reconsidering, thought they were strong but not as strong as the protagonist. The scene shifted to the cafeteria, where Seong asked Big Bro, shouldn't you have gotten better results? Ho-young replied that scoring high was pointless as it wouldn't have given him any rewards. He needed to be in Yunam's group to steal his rewards, and scoring higher would have risked him becoming the group leader, so he scored less. While he talked and ate, Yesawel and Junho thought he was impressive for being able to speak so clearly while eating. Suddenly, a status window appeared, announcing the start of the second quest, Rescue Yunam. Time limit 1 hour. Location River Garden. Yesoale and Junho panicked, worried that the protagonist might be in trouble, but relieved that River Garden wasn't far. After Yunam regressed, he taught a few thugs in the academy a lesson. However, one of those thugs was the son of Park Yong-seok, the guild leader of Red Moon, one of the top 10 guilds. Park Yong-seok ordered his high-ranking hunters to beat Yunam until he was half dead. In the novel, Yunam is rescued by someone because he had the Ring of Nikihi, but now the ring is taken by Hoyoung after winning the dungeon, putting Yunam in danger. While running to rescue Yunam, Yeso asked Hoyoung if the situation was dangerous enough to endanger Yunam. Hoyoung nodded, stating they should be prepared as their opponents were tough to defeat using normal methods. No matter how strong Yunam was now, he was still just an academy cadet, and they needed to rescue him at all costs. The scene cuts to Yunam being picked on by a group of thugs who taunted him for daring to mess with their young master. Then the thug who was picking on Yunam notices a sound, and as he moves his head, Seoyeon shoots him. Hoyoung asked why she attacked suddenly, and she replied that she didn't like his attitude. Seong then charged, stating he would enjoy beating them up, and all of them charged together. Two men with sunglasses, one creating a barrier to block bullets and the other slicing bullets with ease. The thug who had been shot stood up, declaring they were done for. While charging towards the enemy, Hoyoung thought that although Seoyeon's shot seemed reckless, her timing was impeccable. They had 3 enemies, but the difference in their abilities was significant. Yunam saw an opening and swung his spear, joining the fight. He remarked that he didn't know how they kept appearing. Hoyoung interrupted, stating they didn't have time to thank each other, as they had bigger problems at hand. Seong, with his stone fist level 2, charged at the thug who had been shot, assuming he was the weakest. However, Seong couldn't touch him, as his infinity ability activated, throwing Seong back. Losing his cool, thug screamed, breaking his sunglasses.